Hello and welcome to the Lanterna Knowledge Network, where we celebrate all things wine, spirit, and gourmet while educating each other at the same time. Lanterna has decided to introduce this knowledge network as a multifaceted approach to generate knowledge, skills to those in our industry, to our team members, and our clients. My name is Jack, and I will be your host this episode. Today we are covering Sonoma. As with most wine regions around the world, when discussing them, it's best to talk about the history first. The history of the place and of the people. All of these things have to do with the final product of what we find in the bottle every day. Let's start way back, way back, when Sonoma was actually below sea level. Sonoma was the result of a couple of tectonic plates kind of colliding. Created the Mayacamas Mountains and kind of unearthed this large array of geology, which we now see as Sonoma. Sonoma itself has some of the most diverse terroir in all of California, making it incredibly unique to support many different varieties of grapes. Many people believe that the Spanish were the first settlers in Sonoma. While this is true, believe it or not, the Russians were also up there as one of the first. In 1812, they settled Fort Ross, which still to this day is an American viticulture area. They actually planted the first grapevines in Sonoma there. But wine culture was kind of slow to take hold in Sonoma. Sure, there were some local drinkers, but it never really had much export out of the state, or certainly out of the country, until about the 1960s. In the 1960s is when we see our first plantings of some of the most iconic grape varieties. Things like Pinot Noir and Chardonnay really take a foothold in the 1960s. Today there are 18 very distinct American viticulture areas in Sonoma. There are 1,800 grape growers, 425 different wineries, and 62,000 acres under vine. You see a lot of different grape varieties. There are 66 different grape varieties that are being grown and made into wine in Sonoma. Of those 66 though, 7 account for 90% of the wine that is made. Those 7 grape varieties are Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Cabernet, Syrah, Zinfandel, Merlot, and Sauvignon Blanc. You'll notice that a lot of those have one thing in common. Most of them are French. There's really only one outlier that, believe it or not, is from Croatia. Pinot Noir has done very well in Sonoma. All over Sonoma you can find a little bit of Pinot Noir, but specifically in the Russian River Valley is where you find the best Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir has really found its home in the Russian River Valley. Pinot Noir does very well. It tends to be a decently cool climate. But you also get a good number of sunlight hours, and therefore you get a solid amount of ripening. The wines tend to be very specific, and if we're comparing, which we are because we're talking about wine, we must then discuss that Pinot Noirs from the Russian River Valley tend to show a little bit more ripe fruit character, a little bit more roundness than those from Burgundy, and certainly those from the Willamette Valley in Oregon. Let's talk about one of our Pinot Noirs. This is West Side Crossing by Rick Moshin. We're located in the Russian River. This is a blend of many of his vineyards in the southern bit of the Russian River. Rick has a really beautiful winery. It's all gravity flow, right in the heart of the best growing region for Pinot Noir in the Russian River.
The question of how I got started in wine and became a winemaker started with a mentor, a fellow named Roger Gribble. Back in the 70s, we made home wine, made wine in my garage, and actually brought grapes from all over California and made some really nice wines that started inspiring me, that that I make Pinot someday. Yeah, so people ask me if I have a degree in winemaking, and the answer is no. I'm a self-taught. Had a mentor, Roger Gribble, who helped me learn some of the basics, but basically I did a lot of experimenting with vineyards over the years. And now I find myself that I don't follow textbooks very much. I try all different fermentation techniques. I do some pump over, whole cluster. I do a carbonic fermented Pinot void of oxygen. And then I do the traditional open top punch down. But I think by not having a degree, it really expanded my horizons, especially for making Pinot, which is tends to be one of the most difficult red wines to make. So, yes. So what I think has surprised me about being a winemaker is my connection with the earth and the amount of time I spend farming my vineyards and grapes. I feel a real connection to my vines. So I think the goals I'm still trying to achieve is trying to grow a perfect grape. And I think that if you have a grape that has lots of flavor and character, it carries over into the wine and makes a wine that is definitely better quality, more interesting. So spend lots of time doing different things in the vineyards, trying to perfect the flavor and grape growing. So we do a lot of hand work, and we're still working at it. So who do I admire in the California wine industry? I think one of my inspirations is Josh Jensen. He is a pioneer, especially in the Pinot Noir. Had great ideas, made wonderful wines, and he inspired me early on when I started making wine. And then harvest. What do I find to be one of the most difficult things about harvest is recruiting interns. We have about 7 or 8 interns every year from all over the world. So we recruit interns and then do forklift training. And one of the most difficult things here at this winery is driving these forklifts up and down the hills full of grapes and heavy objects. So.
So for our Chardonnay from Sonoma, we're going to be talking about Barrique. Barrique is a product of Brack Mountain. Brack Mountain wines make many labels, and they certainly do focus on Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. So let's talk about their Chardonnay. So this is Barrique Chardonnay from Sonoma Coast from 2017. Classically, a lot of producers from Sonoma often throw their Chardonnays into some oak. This tends to give it a more rich and full and medium plus or heavy bodied Chardonnay. Like many Chardonnay producers in Sonoma, this Chardonnay does see some time in oak. As you may have guessed by its name, Barrique does mean French oak in French. So let's try this thing. On the nose, it's very classic. You do get a lot of that soft tangerine and yellow apple and red apple fruit characters. A little bit more unique. You do get some floral character, like some lemon blossom and some white flowers. It's really beautiful. Onto the palate. This wine does rip with acidity. It is super tart right up front, showing more green apple than any other kind of apple right off the bat. Salivary glands are still going. Some like lemon curd. But then in the mid palate, it really tends to soften and broaden. You get a lot more of the creamy texture. Like creamsicle turns into tangerine kind of thing. On the back palate, you just get a touch of that wood, just a little bit of that, those baking spices. So that is Barrique Chardonnay from 2017 from Sonoma Coast.
Hey guys, this is Dan Fitzgerald with Bracken Mountain Wine Company. I'm standing out here in Cousins Vineyard, which is where we source a lot of the L'Oliveto Pinot, the L'Oliveto Rosé of Pinot, and some of the bench Pinot as well. Started this company with Jason Ennis in 2008. We were actually at this winery right over there. That's Pellegrini Winery. I used to be the winemaker there. And they did custom crush, and I was making my own brand there, and I started making some wine for Jason, and then he and I teamed up and started Bracken Mountain together. Within a few years, we had outgrown this winery, and we were actually making more wine than they were. And so we built out a winery in Sebastopol, where we are now. We really started off just making delicious kind of grassroots style wines that were really affordable, that we really kind of targeted the by the glass segment of on premise, just because it seems like not a lot of people were doing that at the time. And we were coming out of a recession then. So we've come full circle. But anyway, it was really successful for us, and we grew very, very quickly. We started off with 500 cases in 2008, and we're about 100,000 case winery now. We've really tried to stick to our roots, and I'll show you guys the inside of our cellar too. You know, we're all about small lot fermentation and keeping those lots separated and treating them the way they need to be treated rather than making these massive blends. I think it really allows us to make wines that are distinctive, and even though we're a much larger producer now, we're still making these small batch style wines with the winemaking techniques we started off with. So anyway, like I said, we're at Olivet Lane Vineyard. One of the things that we do now is we're really committed to sustainable agriculture. So we won't work with any farmers that use glyphosate, so Roundup. As you can see, we're cultivating every single row. And so we'll actually go through and till every other row every year, and we're trying to reintroduce native plants, increase the microbial and insect life, the good microbes, and essentially the idea is to leave the land in better shape for the next generation. Hey guys, Dan again, back at the winery. This is Brack Winery. So I got into winemaking kind of by accident, as a lot of winemakers do. It seems that there's a lot of winemakers out there that did it basically as a second lease on life. I was originally an architecture major from the University of Arizona. I was working at an architectural firm out of college in San Francisco, and I hated my job. And so naturally, as all young men do, I called my dad to complain. And he had just moved to Healdsburg and bought a little property there with a little vineyard on it. And basically it's like, you know, you've always liked wine. Why don't you come up here and help me work on the house and work a harvest? I thought that sounded like a pretty good idea. So in 2002, I ended up working a harvest for Quivira Winery and just fell in love with it. And went down to Australia for a couple years at Coldstream Hills, and went back to Napa at Robert Sinsky, and then I went back to college. Went to Fresno State and got my degree in enology over there, and landed at William Fellum out of college on their winemaking team for a year, and then was recruited by Pellegrini as their assistant winemaker, and later on their winemaker. And from there on, I came here to Brack. So I have a whole list of questions I'm supposed to answer. What surprised you about being a winemaker? Oh, well, how much time I'd spend on a forklift, probably. This job is not as romantic as people think. Most of the time, I'm repairing heavy equipment or running heavy equipment. And then the rest of the time, I'm actually blending, so I guess that is the romantic part. And I do spend a lot of time in the vineyards, which is nice. Although it's really hot out there today. Wow, summer came early. What else do we want to know? What goals in winemaking are you still working to achieve? Well, every year I try and make them better. You know, it's funny, people always ask me which one's my favorite wine, and usually I tell them last vintage because I feel like, you know, we're constantly improving, we're constantly getting to know the vineyards better. And lately, you know, we've had some fires. And so that's brought a whole new curve to our ever steepening learning curve. But it's been fun, and yeah, I like this job a lot because it's a great blend of science and creativity, and all the good winemakers I know, I think they're really great winemakers because they're intuitive and they trust their gut. And you can always tell when you talk to these guys, you know, the ones that really get it. And so that's I guess what I'm trying to move forward to. Still have a long ways to go. Got a lot of work ahead of me, I hope. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video and got to know us a little bit better. Thank you for your patronage.
From the history to the diversity of the growing region to the wines themselves, Sonoma is incredibly unique and is really important to learn in your quest to learn more about wine. Sonoma should be one of the first regions that you delve into. Thank you for joining us here at the Lanterna Knowledge Network. If you liked what you saw, please feel free to give us a like on your Facebook or Instagram or Twitter pages, and give us a share too. Make sure all your friends see this. Follow our Facebook pages for updates, and feel free to send us your feedback. Or if you're looking for another kind of video, let us know at LKN@lanternawines.com. Thanks. Cheers.